Rollo.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Wave and Fair podcast. Happy New Year, 2025. We got to get a good kind of start on our little podcast project here to end 2024, and excited to dive into some new topics in the new year. I'm Quinn Rollo, and I'm excited to talk about our topic tonight. I'll kick it on over to Matt.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to 2025. Welcome to Wave It Fair. And here in 2025, we will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of that home run, I believe, on October 21st. So it's a very important year for Wave It Fair.
Good point.
And I am looking forward to talking about our topic tonight. So I'll hand it over to Dave Greco.
Yeah. What home run are you talking about? Yeah. I'm Greco. And we've been on sabbatical for what, almost a month now,
Yeah,
right?
about a month. Yeah.
Yeah, about a month, which nice time with the holidays, all that stuff. Certainly looking forward to keeping this going. And one of the things that I'm hoping for is more games for us to hit up as a crew as well. That being said, one of the things that is great about this podcast is the fact that we've known each other now for, in some cases, at least about more than 10 years. At least more than 10 years now.
Oh, it's close to like 15 for you and me, Greco, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. I mean, we're salty veterans at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And the good news is that we continue to stay in contact, even between the podcasts. So we spent a month away, but we still stayed in contact. And every once in a while, a nice little interesting fact about players and things, and we're going to be talking about some pitchers today. And there was something recently that Mr. Rollo sent out about a pitcher, and it was a little meme about how good was Mariano Rivera,
Huh.
and said more people walked on the moon, 12, than scored earned runs against Mariano Rivera in the postseason. He only gave up 11. Now,
Wow.
considering the fact that that's probably almost a season's worth of games that this guy pitched in the postseason, and not to mention the fact that the ones that he did give up, while be it some weren't earned that we think of, are fairly significant. So, one of Mister uh, Taylor's remarks, and we've already hashed out the whole Hall of Fame thing, was that this is why he would have a hard time putting any other closer in the Hall of Fame.
Yep. Yep. And I think I don't, I watched him so often. I just thought that that's what a closer's supposed to do.
Mm.
Mm.
Um, and he did, you think about it, like his failures were so memorable because like every game he pitched in was important. So you remember when I think to my knowledge, his only loss is the Diamondbacks, um, in game seven. Um, and then I know I remember a home run Sandy Alomar hit against them in the playoffs that cost him a save. I remember Jason Varitek hitting a sack fly that cost him a game. Um, and obviously Bill Miller.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right.
So
So here's my problem with that. Any other closer is not worthy of Hall.
no, I wouldn't say that. I
Okay.
wouldn't say
Okay.
no,
I misread that text because
no,
I was gonna jump on that, right?
yeah,
Because
no.
yeah, yeah. You can't compare the best to everybody else,
Yeah,
right?
I
Because
tend to fall more towards old school closers: Goose Gossage, Bruce Sutter, Dennis Eckersley. Um,
Lee,
Yeah, fingers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, that makes more sense. But my response to that was to name a bunch of guys that wouldn't get into the Hall of Fame. And Mr. Rolo started saying that he would be okay with that, with the exception of Poppy, which is ridiculous. So, um, some of these things are nuts. Um,
It's the Hall
so
of Fame, not the Hall of Very Good.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, no, and I agree with that. And I'll tell you what, one of my big issues with, and I know we kind of covered this, but you'd made me think about when you said, this is what a closer should do. I think about football in particular when you know a lot of guys get in the Hall of Fame, but not only that, the celebrations that these dudes will have, like a defensive end sacking a quarterback, and then pretending to dig a grave after he does his job finally, and they're losing by 40.
Uh-huh.
Like, come on, enough. So yeah, do your
That's,
job.
that's the thing about Rivera too, was he would just be breaking bats like it was his job, and he would just sort of like the image that pops up into my head the most with Mariano Rivera is him throwing that goddamn cutter, breaking a bat, and seeing this like weak grounder to first after he broke that bat, and Mariano just kind of like just sort of walking kind of around the mound, kind of like just he's like, "Yep, there's another one," and let me just walk around the mound and get back up to receive the pitch or to receive the ball again to get to the next guy. He always acted like he had been there before.
Yeah, he
He's
was an
just
assassin.
breaking bats.
He just as you said, Taylor. This is what they should do. That's what he felt. This is what I should be doing. No reason to get excited about it until you win the World Series. This is what I should be doing. So excellent. All right, boys. Well, hey, this starts our little Cy Young Award series.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be touching on 1985 to begin the Cy Young Award discussion.
Yes.
Um, Mr. Taylor, you're probably gonna have a lot more input on these for us. Why don't we get you to start it up?
so I was looking at that, and it was won by Brett Saberhagen. I thought I was wrong about two things. I thought that I thought I was right about that and wrong about the other thing I'm going to talk about.
All right.
Uh, I thought that was his rookie year. It was not. Um, and the other thing I was right about that I thought I was wrong about was he also won the World Series MVP that year uh,
Mm.
when the Royals came back and beat the Cardinals in that crazy series. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he won the world MVP of that World Series. Um, so my internet is slow for some reason, but um, he was 20-6, I think. He
Yeah,
threw like
20 and 6.
260 innings.
Yeah,
Uh, Imagine that shit today.
yeah, yeah. And that's going to be something that we're going to be seeing steadily decrease. Yeah. So he threw 235 innings. Guidry, who came in second, threw 260. But yeah, Saberhagen was a beast. Now, the interesting thing is that a lot of my point of reference for this stuff is gonna be the baseball cards I collected when I was a kid.
Yep.
Mm.
Like I can't say that I'm familiar with a lot of these guys beyond that.
Nothing wrong with
Um,
that.
so
And like I feel like that's my frame of reference too. Not that I collected cards, but I just know the names through like baseball osmosis of hearing the game talked about enough by like talking heads. So the names like obviously Guidry. My frame of reference for him is that he was the pitching coach for the Yankees for a while, right? So I remember him in that role. But then certainly Burt Blyleven. That's just a really that name sticks out. Uh, Quisenberry and um,
Line Brand,
Live Rant.
yeah,
I I've heard Quisenberry. I didn't know about is it Lee Brandt or Live Rant? Because
Lee
both.
Brandt.
What was
mm-hmm.
that, Matt?
It was Lee Brandt.
Lee Brandt.
Yep.
I didn't realize that Kansas City had three freaking pitchers that got Cy Young votes that year. No wonder why they won the World Series that year.
Yeah.
Damn, they were a wagon.
The thing I remember most about that was the blown call in the World Series by Don
Mm.
Denkinger, umpire. And then the other thing was um, the, I think the Royals were the first team to come back from 3-1 deficits twice in the ALCS and the World Series. And they won the World Series after losing the first two games at home. The first team to do that. So it was an interesting World Series. And George Brett was just phenomenal that whole. I mean, he was a phenomenal player in the big games anyway, but
Yeah, that's his performance in that year is really what sticks out to me.
yep.
During that. Now, the interesting thing, Blyleven, I think, is one of those borderline guys, um, you know, that, as far as the Hall of Fame goes, right?
Yeah. He's in there.
Um,
He is
he
in
is,
there. Yeah.
yeah. And I always associate him with Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize, I'm looking at his stats now. My man pitched for like 20 years. And out of those,
Pirates.
Pirates. He had two stints with Minnesota, 71 through 76. Looks like they traded him to Texas midseason. Pitched for the Pirates for 4 years.
Won
Then
a
to
World Series
Cleveland
there.
for a number. He was with Cleveland for a lot. And then it looks like in 85, he was actually traded from Cleveland back to Minnesota, where he
Mm-hmm.
pitched for another 5 to 10 years. I'm sorry, 10 years, 5 years to about 10 years in Minnesota. I didn't realize he moved around so much.
Yeah.
Yep.
I always just associate him straight with Minnesota.
Yeah, he ended his career with California.
Yeah.
Definitely has the record of what I pictured being a Minnesota Twin. 287 and 250. Just a little better than average.
Yep.
You're awful. You're awful. Yeah. I love it. Well, he won 2 World Series for the guy, so
Mm-hmm.
pretty
Cool.
impressive.
Cool name. Cool name. I'll give him that.
Well, he was born in the Netherlands.
It sounds like a very Netherlandy name.
It does. It does. It does. One of the other names that sticks out for me, actually, there's a couple on this one for the American League. Dave Steeb. I remember him with Toronto. In those early '90s Toronto teams, being something. And then Mike Moore. Mike Moore pitched for Seattle that year, but I remember him with my boys during my World Series runs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You guys remember the other Moore on that list, right?
Oh, Donnie Moore. Name sounds familiar, and I know I should know more about him, but tell us.
Donnie Moore, the name does not ring a bell. Please enlighten me, Matt.
That is who Dave Henderson hit his home run off.
Oh, that's right. And he ended up
committing suicide.
Yeah.
Really?
I forgot about that. He did. I forgot that was him. Yes. And they were buddies too.
Yep.
I forgot about that.
Yep.
But wait a second. Was that in the 86? In the 86 series against the Angels? Yep. And then Donnie Moore committed suicide a few years later?
89, yeah. Yep.
And he cited that it was the game.
Really?
Never got over it.
Holy shit. Wow.
It's crazy. And, that's the best, I would say in my life, that's the best baseball game I ever saw was game 5 of that ALCS. That was a crazy game. And if you look at that pitch that he threw, Henderson, it was off the plate for a home run. Like
it was just a great hit.
Yeah. Like he hit it off the plate. They wanted him to throw a fastball, but I guess he wanted to throw a slider and he threw it where Henderson could hit it. And Baylor hit a home run off Mike Witt earlier in that inning, and that pitch was off the plate too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Crazy game.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a name. And I'm glad you brought that up because that name didn't resonate with me until you said it. The second you said that, I remembered. Yeah, and they were buds, which is pretty crazy because they ended up playing together for a little bit too.
And in terms Guidry, I was just going to mention Guidry because obviously the big playoff game in '78 where Bucky ended the home run. Nobody remembers that Guidry started that game.
You know,
almost nobody ever talks about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And Yaz hit a home run off of Guidry early in the game, and it was the only home run Guidry gave up to a left-hander all year. All year.
I'll tell you what, Guidry's stash back when he was a pitcher was much more impressive than it was as a pitching coach.
Dude, that year in 1978, he was so dominant.
And he had such a mustache.
Such a mustache. Like, I think it was really all mustache. It was the mustache that was carrying the day, I think.
Yep.
Such a mustache. Yeah, the Quinn Rollo in the face of the Yankees. my man goes to bed thinking about these baby-faced Yankees.
Garrett Cole
does your wife
really
know?
Consider getting a stash on him. Maybe it would make his face a little less punchable.
Does your wife know you go to bed thinking about facial hair of grown men?
Good question. Might have to have a talk to her about that. That's probably why she goes to bed, and stays far away from, these little podcast conversations.
I want to know the truth. I don't blame her. I don't blame her. All right, you want to head up to the Nationals?
National League. Dwight Gooden. Talk about one of the names that obviously, having only been 2 years old when this season took place, and I know that Dwight Gooden played for a while, had a pretty good career, and won 2 World Series from what I looked at in his career. Not only the one with the Mets in '86, but then also with the Yankees, actually, 10 years later, and looked like he had a pretty good career that maybe falls into the category, though, of not as scintillating as this Cy Young year, because I feel like Dwight Gooden, in the way that just pop culturally I would hear him referred to, must be all anchored into this season and how dominant he was. So I'm really curious to hear from you, Matt, because I'm sure you probably have some actual recollections of seeing him pitch in this season.
Yeah. He it was as dominant a season as I've seen. And have you guys what documentary or a 30 for 30 I recommend you guys watch it is Once Upon a Time in Queens. Highly recommend it.
Is that the one about the Mets?
It's mainly about Gooden and Strawberry.
Okay.
And all the
drug use issues that they had too.
Keith Hernandez too. And just how crazy that team was. That team was crazy, man.
Yeah. Well, talk about a mustache plant. Keith Hernandez. If you want to see a good mustache. I know it's not the Yankees.
Yeah. Another guy that should be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree with that. Yeah. I agree with that. It's funny because I think this is he's one of my early interesting pitchers that I remember growing up, right? So Doc Gooden was that guy. Him and the other guy on the other side, Oil Can Boyd, with the unique kind of, first name, nickname kind of deal. But I don't remember much about him pitching, primarily because we didn't watch a lot of National League games back then. So, obviously, I remember the World Series. Was that
the Mets on WOR on cable? So I would watch the Mets too. the thing I remember most about him is he was the true definition of a 12-6 curveball.
Mm.
He had a better, even better than Pedro, I would say.
Well,
He had the best
Pedro,
curveball I ever saw.
yeah, Pedro's curveball I always pictured as being a little more of like a kind of a faster snapping curveball. Like it definitely had good break to it, but it wasn't quite the kind of looping curve that some guys have.
This guy had an insane curveball.
We'll be talking about another curveball later on, that actually made Pedro sad. A few
Mm-hmm.
years later.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah,
He had a good curveball.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that was his whole pitch. Um, I mean,
1.53 ERA that
Yep.
season, though. Holy shit.
As dominant as I've ever seen.
16 complete games, 276 innings.
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, it's bonkers. 268 strikeouts, like all of these categories, all these big categories, you could see that like he led the league. It's just an unreal, and I guess I didn't think about that until you said it, Matt. That he's maybe kind of a cautionary tale. Not that it completely like submarined his career, but you wonder how much substance use and anything that kind of went along with it potentially undermined how great he could have been.
Yep. Yeah, it railroaded him.
Mm.
Um, and it's interesting. I'm looking down the list. I remember John Tudor and being dominant that year.
Mm.
Uh, and that was a great race between the Mets and St. Louis. And I remember John Tudor being dominant that year, and the reason I remember that is because he pitched for the Red Sox in the early 80s. He was good there.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
that name actually does not ring a bell. Tudor, I only think of like the Tudor dynasty, Queen Elizabeth II,
yeah,
so forth. I don't really think about. I haven't heard that name as a pitcher.
he was a good pitcher. He was a lefty, and he didn't look like he was throwing hard at all, but somehow he got into the low to mid 90s. And he was a good pitcher.
I remember him in some highlights from the World Series that
Yep. Yep.
year. Obviously the next guy, Oral Hershiser.
He's
Yeah.
a guy that I know.
Yeah.
Now, does Oral Hershiser still hold the record for most consecutive
Scoreless.
scoreless innings? Right?
I think he might, yeah.
I don't think anybody's broken. I could be wrong
I don't
about
think
that.
so either.
It wasn't
Uh,
like 38 or something like that,
Like
or
yeah,
was it,
almost 60.
yeah,
oh, jeez, damn.
yeah. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. At least for a starter. I think some closers have hit it, but at least for a starter,
Yep.
I don't think he's done it.
It was like 60, maybe even more.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of ridiculous.
Oral
Um,
Hershiser, yeah, over 59 consecutive innings, opposing hitters did not score a run against Hershiser. Damn.
yeah. And talk about a professor looking kind of guy. Right. He looked like he should have been like a dentist.
Nerd alert, big time.
Yeah.
He's a money
Uh,
pitcher.
Oh yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I don't remember Andujar. Um,
I do.
you do. Okay.
He was an explosive guy. Let's put it that way.
Oh,
Uh,
personality wise?
yeah. He
Yeah,
lost his
really.
mind in that World Series. I think it was game 7. He lost his shit. Um, he was a very tempestuous type of guy. I didn't have a problem with him. He was a good pitcher, but yeah, he had a reputation of being a loose cannon. I don't know if he's still alive. I don't think he's alive anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I remember him.
Cool. Um,
Tempestuous. That's a great word.
Best. Yeah.
I gotta start throwing that around more in my day-to-day vocab.
Let's see.
I mean, obviously Fernando Valenzuela,
Fernando, yeah, oh yeah.
Tom Browning. Um, it's funny, Jeff Reardon. He's another guy I associate with Bly 11 with the '87 World
Twins.
Series with the
Yep.
Twins. Yeah. Um, Just another one of those names from my childhood um, that I recall. So excellent. Anybody want to touch on any of these folks more than we have? I mean, we kind of brushed over Fernando. I don't know if he's going to show up anywhere else.
Well,
He just
because
passed.
he was a little more dominant, or like when he burst onto the scene in the earlier '80s, right? And then he got hung around for a while, like longer than I had initially thought. But he was more of like a sensation in the earlier '80s, I think.
He Lasorda basically, kind of, I don't want to say railroaded his career, but he would throw him like almost 300 innings every single year.
Ish.
That
So,
was the 70s, early 80s, though.
yep.
Yeah,
I mean, especially when you had a guy like Nolan Ryan um, in the National League with you, and he kind of set a precedent of being you know one of those workhorses that was a little too dominant.
285 innings in 82, 257, 261, 272, 269, 251. 87. That's a lot of innings.
yeah. Well, and if we transition into 1986, but stay on Fernando, he actually, like, I mean, he was still holding strong. He almost won the Cy Young in 1986, actually, because 88 uh he got 88 points of the vote, and the winner that year was Mike Scott, and he got 98 points. So that was a pretty close vote. Now, I will say up front, I don't know who in the blue hell Mike Scott is. So can either of you enlighten me as to who the winner of the National League Cy Young is from
I can,
1986?
and I will. So what's interesting, that was another guy who had a crazy dominant year that year.
Hmm.
The thing I remember most is when they clinched the division, the NL West, which is a big deal. He threw a no-hitter to clinch the division.
Oh, damn.
That was one.
That's clutch.
Um, and the Mets, if you look at the 86 Mets and them talking about Mike Scott, they couldn't hit him. He's like, if that National League Championship Series went to a game 7, they're like, we would have lost.
Wow.
And they also said he scuffed the ball. They're like, we know he scuffed the ball.
Mm.
They
Well,
bitched about how unfair it was. And Gary Carter actually made him show the umpire the ball in the playoffs.
he did pitch for Houston, so I mean,
Yeah.
the
Those
cheating.
trash throws.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Long history. Well, I'll tell you what. Looking at this list, there's no surprise that the Mets made it to the World Series. Never mind winning it. I mean,
Yeah.
Ojeda, Ron Darling, who I
Mhm.
always thought was one of the better, more consistent, kind of reminded me of a Mike Musina
Mm.
um,
Mm.
kind of pitcher. Sid Hernandez, and then obviously Doc, who we talked about earlier. Um, when you have 4 pitchers getting Cy Young Award votes, even albeit small percentage, that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah.
I met Ron Darling. He's from here. I think he's from like Millbury, actually.
I thought he's from
Really?
Hawaii.
That's Fernandez is from Hawaii. Sid Fernandez is from Hawaii. I'm pretty sure.
No,
Uh,
Ron Darling, Honolulu, Hawaii. I mean, he might be
yeah.
living in Mass.
Oh, maybe he was born there. Yeah.
Yeah, he might be living in Mass now. Um, but yeah, I remember he showed up on like one of the, you ever watch those little documentaries like the best players from each state?
Mm.
It was
Yeah.
always him and like Victorino.
Right.
That was
Flying
Uh,
always,
Hawaiian. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Very cool.
must remember Kruko, Greco. You must know about Mike Kruko.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember Kruko. Um, you know, he's another guy that I remember more the name, but there was something significant that happened with um him and my boys back in the day.
Well, I was gonna say he must be one of your sworn enemies,
Well, he
considering
did
he
pitch for
played for the
San Francisco
Giants.
for years. So, um, I actually, yeah. So I'm looking at his thing. I actually, I do remember him a little bit more with like watching some documentaries about the Cubs. But what are you thinking that I should know, recognize him from there, Taylor?
So he's the color analyst for the Giants. If you ever heard him talk about Kuip and Kruk, that's who they're talking about. Dwayne Kuiper and
Yes, I totally forgot about that.
yep.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, I don't like listening to them. Uh, but well, the funny thing is that 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 Kuiper's brother was the color analyst for the
Yeah.
A's.
Yep.
Um, and he got in trouble, which I don't think he should have.
For
Um,
something.
yeah, yeah, some unfortunate slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was more of a salary dump on the broadcast side for the A's than anything else. But yes, I forgot about that. Kruko. That's why I know him. But I do remember him from the Cubs too. Seeing some highlights, specifically back in the day when I want to say he had something to do with the game where Sandberg was a rookie. Uh, some significant game that they both played in. Cool. All right. Um, American League boys.
Hmm. Matt, you want to?
Anything to talk about here?
Yeah.
Well, you know, that was his most dominant year. I remember him starting 14-0. Um, yeah, I mean he kicked ass that year.
I'm
Uh,
I'm curious though. What's the origin story of you, Matt, deciding that Clemens was just like Satan incarnate on the mound?
I would say the thing that well, if you look at it, right? So I don't know if you've seen this or not. I know Greco has seen this. Uh, but when he was in Boston, he just acted like an asshole. Uh,
Mm.
I heard stories about him as one of those crazy parents at his kids' games. Um, he he would treat people like shit at the airport, things like that. But the thing that I remember most about him is him losing his fucking mind in the league championship series against the A's,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
where they threw him out of a game, like in the third inning. It was a deciding game. I'll never forget it.
What year was that?
90,
Oh, damn.
90.
Yeah.
And everybody called him the greatest pitcher ever. And you guys know how I hate overrated players and people. Can't stand it. Um, and, like, and it's pretty clear he used steroids. And,
Mm.
he had this, he tried to blame it on his wife, dude.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Like,
did.
think of that poor girl. Like, and he hooked up with his country singer named Mindy McCready,
Oh,
uh,
yeah, I remember that.
who was like 15 years old.
Yeah. Mm.
She died too. I think she committed suicide. But the thing that pushed it over the top for me was throwing the bat at Piazza. That was just so off the fucking wall. Um, like I was like, I hope somebody fucking kills him. And I hope John Stearns, the third base coach, who had a reputation as a tough guy, goes out and just fucking buries him. They never did.
Having said that, 24-4. That's not bad.
He had an
Yeah.
amazing year.
Yeah.
Starting with a 20 strikeout game, against the Mariners. Um, you know,
Yeah, was that 20 strikeout game? Was that in like April of '86?
yeah,
Because that's right, because I remember one of the things that was so unique about it is that there weren't a lot of people in the stands, right?
Oh,
Probably because it was cold, and also because the Celtics were starting their playoff run in
yep,
their one of their most dominant seasons ever.
yep,
And it was the Mariners.
Oh, right, that too.
yeah. And I think the other thing was like if you look at his postseason numbers from
Mm.
like when he was with the Red Sox and then a little, sometime after that, wasn't great. So, when he would have shit like that happen, there's the mystery about him asking out of game six. That's
Mm.
a shit show. Him melting down against the A's, melting down against the Mets, you know, and then, he really didn't do anything at this particular time. But I remember he threw kind of high, but not up in it, it wasn't that close to Manny, and Manny like exploded on him. Do you guys remember
Oh
that?
yeah,
Oh, I remember that. That's
yeah,
what led to Pedro
Zim.
bouncing Zimmer like a
yeah,
basketball on the ground.
Yeah.
yeah,
Poor Zim.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny, um, because, and this is something that's gonna always come up, at least to me. You think about um how these guys do, and we talked a little bit about it when we were going through some of the rookie of the year stuff, and a lot with the Hall of Fame, talking about how these guys fare in the playoffs. There is something to say about the fact that you're playing the best of the best in the playoffs.
Worse.
And so that's what makes that Mariano stat even more unique, because the murderous row that you're facing in the playoffs, specifically as a pitcher, I don't care if you did steroids or not, but if you're pitching against home run kings, days in, days out, um, you should see some inflated stats. So any of those guys who hung in there, um, I always give a little bit of grace in the playoffs. Um, so when they do well, I think it weighs more than when they do poorly.
And, as much as I hate the guy, there's no question I would put him in the Hall of Fame.
Mm.
Unquestionably. Um, you know, you can't, you certainly can't question his number. Well, maybe you can. But,
In the
for me,
beginning, in the beginning,
yeah,
he had the he had the he had the shape of a Hall of Fame career going for him.
yeah,
Even in Toronto,
yeah.
he was dominant there.
I
You
mean,
know,
Toronto didn't he win the Cy Young both years he was there?
Might have, might have. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Uh,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
find out in a little bit.
Cy Young award both years in Toronto. He won the Cy Young.
yeah, yeah.
So spoiler alert
Yeah, right.
for later in this series.
Yeah. Um, Teddy Higuera.
Yep. I
Name sounds
remember.
familiar. It's funny to think about Milwaukee in the American League. But yeah, Taylor, educate us.
He threw a no hitter. I know that he was a lefty. Um, kind of a crafty left-hander. I wouldn't say he was a hard thrower, but he was a consistent major league pitcher. I don't
Yeah,
know
he
what
looked effective this year at least.
let's see. I don't know what his career numbers are. Let's see.
Yeah, he only pitched for
24 and
9 years.
60.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember him. He was an effective pitcher. Um, the Brewers were known mainly for um, they used to call it, so the 82 team that went to the World Series, they called Harvey's Wallbangers because their manager was a guy named Harvey Keene, and it was Gorman Thomas and Robin Yount and Ben Ogilvy and who else is on that team? Paul Molitor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, they called them Harvey's Wallbangers, but they had some good pitchers too, and Higuera was one of them.
Nice.
I think he got hurt.
And that's why his career is shortened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Mike Witt,
Yep.
now that he's brothers to Bobby Witt, right?
I don't think so, but I don't know for sure. He was an excellent pitcher, though.
Mm-hmm.
He was a starter in that game 5 in the ALCS, and he went 8 2/3 innings. And they gave up a home run. Well, he gave up the home run to Baylor, which I think made it 5-4. And then, Gedman came up, and they were worried about him facing Gedman, and they took him out. They brought in a lefty. The lefty hits Gedman, and then Henderson hits a home run.
Yeah. Mr. Taylor, thank goodness you're here, because otherwise, me and Mr. Roll will be starting in the 90s.
So memorable, all this stuff. Like, you remember where you were and stuff, and um, just like, how did we fucking lose that series? Like, how did that fucking happen? Unreal.
Yeah, you poor Red Sox fans, man. Been through it.
The sad thing is, it still bothers me to this day.
Mm.
Probably as much as like, when we lost to the Giants in the perfect season.
Oh, God.
But I like to think of myself as like, I'll always be a Red Sox fan, but I'm not a Red Sox honk.
Yes.
I'm a baseball honk.
Yeah. Damn it.
I like it.
The only other name on that list of potential Cy Young candidates, strike that. I'm familiar with the name Dave Righetti, vaguely, but obviously Jack Morris is the other big name on that list of Cy Young candidates that year. Hall of Famer for the Tigers. That name I certainly know, even though I can't in my mind's eye really picture seeing him pitch. He kind of falls kind of similar into a similar category as Doc Gooden of like, oh, you got to see him pitch like that he had that he was dominant. And so I'm curious to hear from you, Matt. What did he strike that same note with you when you saw him?
Jack Morris?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't remember Jack Morris being a big, I guess you could consider him a power pitcher, but he was more kind of like a forkball, split finger guy. Um, and obviously the thing I remember him for is pitching 10 innings in Game 7 in 1991.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And I'll tell you, another guy, Rollo, you would love his mustache.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing the picture right now. Kind of looks a little doofy though. Looks like he could fill it out a little bit.
Yeah.
What a nickname though, Blackjack.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean he was another guy that ended up getting to the Hall later than some think he should have.
Yep.
Looking at his record, it does look like he almost looks like he has a record that's commensurate with like Pettit or Mussina, kind of like a pretty good, pretty damn good, but maybe on the borderline, at least just kind of looking at just kind of going down the list. It looked like he placed, so to speak, in the Cy Young race multiple times, but he never won. And so kind of seems like he was one of those guys that was never the best in any of his many years that he pitched. But
so you say that because he won more games than any pitcher in the 80s.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he's another one of those guys where it's the argument of in his era, was he dominant amongst his peers?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people would say that he was.
And if you look at that 84 Tigers team, that's one of the best single season teams I ever saw. Like they steamrolled through that season. They started 35-5, I think. And he was like, he was the biggest part of that team. He threw no hitter, Jack Morris. I think the last guy, and this, by the way, this is making me feel fucking old. I remember all those guys. There was a guy, the last guy is Mark Eichhorn,
Mm.
who was a submarine reliever for the Blue Jays. Um, he had 10 saves and went 14-6. Look at his innings for a reliever.
Wow. Yeah, he was busy.
He was there for a while, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, for him to get any votes with only 10 saves as a reliever, I mean, his 1.72 ERA over, 157 innings is pretty damn impressive.
I remember him well.
157 innings
Reliever.
as a reliever. What the hell?
Yeah.
God.
I mean, it says a lot that he even got a vote.
Yeah.
So
Damn.
pretty nice.
Yep.
All right, folks. Anything else in the American League that year?
I don't think so.
Back a lot of memories, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. All right. Next.
Oh, your old friend. I hate to say it.
Yes, sir. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, that was a terrible season for the Red Sox. I remember it well. Um, if I remember correctly, they had a ton of injuries that year. Clemens was really the only, I think Bruce Hurst was hurt, because he pitched so many innings in the playoffs, that he just wasn't the same the next year. I could be wrong about that, but that team was a disaster, that 87 team. I remember Jimmy Key. You guys might remember Jimmy Key.
I remember Jimmy Key.
Dave Stewart, you'll definitely remember.
Who's
Greco
that?
must love Dave Stewart.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Doyle Alexander, Langston, I definitely remember. Teddy Aguirre.
So Doyle Alexander, I had to look back. So I was right. I'm surprised to see him this late. Because I always associated him with somebody who was around. Like that's an older name to me.
Well, he started 71, it looks
Yeah.
like, his career. Holy crap.
And that's what I had to look at. So I wonder, Taylor, do you remember if this was like some sort of like career resurgence for him? It looks like he didn't pitch a ton of innings.
He was traded. If he was traded, this is a very important trade, by the way. He was traded from the Braves to the Tigers for the stretch run because the Tigers won the division that year.
Wow.
And they were
Gotcha.
traded for the stretch.
So this is probably just reflecting his American League stats then.
Yep.
Oh, got
Yep. And he was traded for a guy named John Smoltz.
Oh.
Who's that? Wow. All right. Yep. Wow. Yeah.
Well,
so
and that kind of reminds me of another topic that at some point I'm sure we'll do, which is these trade trees.
Yeah. I'm excited about that one.
Yeah.
But you know what? It worked for Detroit. I mean, there's no way to know like how John Smoltz would be in 1987. Like he went 9-0 for the Tigers, and then they ran into a hot Twins team. I think the Twins won 85 games that year, and they beat the Tigers relatively easy. And then they played in the Homer Dome in the World Series, and they never lost a game in the World Series at the Metrodome.
Well,
so,
I'll tell you, going 9-0, with a 1.53 ERA over 88 innings, I'd say that's pretty decent.
He was a good pitcher.
Yeah, pretty good.
Pretty good.
He was a good pitcher for a long. He won 194 games over his career. Nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
So
again, he has Minnesota though.
Too. Got the handlebar mustache.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
The Twins, Viola.
Yep.
Reardon again. And then, I mean, it's funny when you see how stacked the division is by who's there.
Hmm.
And you look at Detroit, you look at Minnesota, Milwaukee, um, that central is a problem.
Yep.
And Clemens just kind of stomped on them, though.
Clemens
Yeah.
stomped on everybody.
Jeez.
He
He was one
arguably
of
had
those.
a better year that year than he did in 86. He pitched 281 innings
Yeah.
in 87.
And he was just intimidating. I mean,
Yeah.
he'd go inside. He modeled his game after Ryan,
Hmm.
and this is what he did. He was another big Texan. Um, so and I know that's not um, you know, Taylor's favorite thing, but
It is
dude
what
was
it is.
filthy. Dude was filthy.
It is. That was Dwight Evans' best year, too, offensively, 87.
And yet the Sox still had a rough season. That's
They
a
did.
bummer.
Yep.
I mean, I guess it's to be expected. World Series loss hangover, especially losing in the way that they did.
And it took him until the middle of 88 to fire McNamara and then bring in Joe Morgan.
Morgan Magic. Wait a
Yep.
second, but when did Morgan Magic happen?
88.
That was the next season.
88.
Okay.
Yep.
But so my boy up there, the Panther, um,
Dave Stewart.
yeah,
His
that stare was filthy.
dude, he's the one guy that from that era that would stare down Clemens. He beat Clemens all the time.
Yep. Yeah, he didn't care. And he was kind of a journeyman from the beginning.
Yep.
You know, he he endeared me one. I mean, this is when I started really getting into baseball. And obviously he was the ace in the staff in Oakland coming in here. But I remember as a kid, I thought he was a rookie. Like he never pitched for anybody else. But
Hmm.
his career started early. Him and Henderson were best buddies. Ricky Henderson. Growing up, they were both Oakland natives, or at least the Bay Area. And him pitching for the Dodgers and then going to Texas, and it looks like he spent some time in Philly before he went to my boys. And I mean, he always had a decent ERA, but it wasn't until he got to Oakland when he really started to. It seems like deal and start to
If I
dominate.
remember correctly, he won the MVP of that Earthquake series.
He did. He did. He I mean, he got two um ALCS MVPs too.
Yep.
He was one of those guys when you talk about like playoffs and how Clemens, you felt like Clemens faltered. That was the opposite with him. It seemed like when he got on the mound, when the playoffs showed up,
Yep.
he was
For a pitcher for Toronto too. Now that I think about it.
yeah, yeah. Well, him and Ricky, that's where they share two rings together.
Yep.
One in Oakland and one in Toronto.
That was more
Um,
towards the end of his career because I remember the Phillies hitting him hard in the
yeah,
World Series.
yeah. But that was the other one where he got the ALCS
Yep.
MVP.
He was a
So
different guy.
his big bad year was that Cincinnati year with Oakland. They they touched him up pretty good.
Yep.
But everywhere else, oh, I didn't realize he actually went into the he was with the Dodgers in the 81 World Series.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he looks like he got shelled there too. But everywhere else, I mean, you're talking about 228, 225, 217, 270 ERA, um, and then 426 in the World Series. So in 93. But I'll tell you what, he was filthy. He was filthy. Um, yeah, I love Dave Stewart. There was
Uh,
some there was some rumors actually that him and another group of investors and players were actually going to save Oakland A's baseball and buy the
Oh,
team from Fisher before I think it was like the beginning of last season. So um, obviously that didn't come to fruition, but there was some rumors. I don't know how legit it was, but there was rumors that
situation is so bizarre.
yeah, dude, it's such a
So bizarre.
it's ridiculous.
Um, I was looking at Doyle Alexander's record with the Braves, 5-10, 4.13 ERA. But that
Wow,
was
so
a
he
bad.
turned it around.
Damn.
Wow. Yeah, so when he went to the American League, he really switched that up.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. All right. Anything else in the American League?
You must remember Langston Greco.
Yeah, Mark Langston.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pitcher.
What's that?
Good pitcher.
Yeah, I remember him a lot. Well, I mean, he hung out in the AL West, pretty
Yeah.
much his whole career.
Mhm.
Um, you know, he was one of those pesky dudes
Yeah.
that I remember facing my boys, and I can't tell you if there's anything really significant or a moment that sticks out, but I just remember him taking them out a lot, and being one of those guys who's constantly, kind of like a thorn in the side. You couldn't get rid of the guy. But yeah, I remember him very well, very well. I think he was actually one of the guys who didn't he make a cameo in Angels in the Outfield? Wasn't he one of the
He might
actual
have.
players?
Yep. He might have. I don't remember seeing that movie, but
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite movie because it was about the Angels, so I think I've seen it once. But Rolo would probably know.
JGL was in that as a wee lad. Not to mention Christopher Lloyd and Matthew McConaughey. Before actually would have been right around this time of Dazed and Confused. So back before he hit it big. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna sound. I, who the hell is JGL?
JGL is Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
oh,
Yeah. Some may know him from Third Rock from the Sun.
No, yeah, I get it.
I prefer him from my favorite movie of 2009, which was 500 Days of Summer. A gloriously excellent romantic comedy, very melancholy, great soundtrack. He's also really good in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Don't you love those rom coms?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
now Tony Danza was in it.
Tony Danza was in it too. That's right. He was the
Yeah,
pitcher.
and he was actually a pro ball player for
Really?
St. Louis. Yep,
Danny Glover was the crotchety manager.
that makes sense.
It's a good cast in that Angels in the Outfield.
Yeah. Do we go on three, or is it three and then go? That's what I like about Danny Glover.
Mm.
Do
Good
you
old
guys know where
Lethal
that's
Weapon.
from?
It's kind of Lethal Weapon, right? Yeah. It kind of boggles my mind though that they were getting too old for this shit, and he was like what, like 40 maybe when the first one came out.
Which means by the time the last one came out, he was about 65. So,
Yeah, yeah. Like what the hell?
anything else in the American League, guys?
I don't think so. I need you guys to enlighten me as to who in the blue hell Steve Bedrosian is.
Well, so we already kind of talked about him because he was what runner up.
he was a closer.
Yeah, but we actually didn't talk about him, but he did show up as I want to say number two a couple of years
Mm,
back. So talk wax poetically. I want to see what year.
So I remember a
40
little bit.
saves. Wow.
Yep. Yeah, he was a closer for the Phillies, and then he went to the Braves for a little while. Um,
That's where I remember him more because he was part of the. Did he stick around for the World Series team with them?
might have. He might have been like like a, kind of a back of the bullpen piece
Gotcha.
uh, at the end. He had threw a lot at you. Had a lot of arm action, leg action, that type of pitcher.
He's a local guy. He was born in Methuen.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just
Look
for
at that dude.
the record on the AL MVP voting, Dwight Evans was number 4, 305, 34 home runs, 123 RBIs, 106 walks. Rest my case there.
That's a damn good season.
Yep.
Now, um, yeah, oh yeah, he was part of the 91 World Series. So, oh, he was with the 91 World Series with,
Wins.
yeah, the Twins.
Yep.
That's actually what I remember him being in. It wasn't with Atlanta. So this is the first year that we actually get to, I mean, obviously he was there much more, but um, this is the first year we see Mr. Ryan.
Yes, he had a slew of votes back in the '70s, earlier in his career when he was really hitting his stride there. Um, but it's interesting to me when I was looking down his prolific career, just played for freaking ever.
Yeah, he did.
I saw an interesting little anomaly. I suppose it's kind of apropos of nothing, but I just find it really fascinating. Is you see these little notations around whether they were an all-star that year, whether they got any Cy Young votes, any MVP votes. In 1990, he got an MVP vote, but no Cy Young votes.
Yeah, interesting.
How did that happen? like like I mean, you always see it kind of hand in hand where a lot of the Cy Young candidates might also get some MVP votes too, but to get an MVP vote without a Cy Young vote, like what the hell was going on that year?
Mm, it's a good
So look
question.
at his year that year too, and I can't believe I'm looking at this. He was 8-16.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
Yeah,
yeah. Was that the year that either
Man,
he caught the ball in the lip and kept on pitching, or was
maybe
that the year that that he got Ventura in a headlock?
uh, let's
that
see.
was what was with Texas,
Yeah, yeah,
the Rangers.
yeah. Oh, are you talking about the Cy Young vote? Yeah, you're talking about the
Yeah,
Cy
yeah.
Young. I'm
Eight
sorry,
and
I was
six.
going on the MVP vote year that Rolo brought up,
Mm.
which was 90 with
Yep.
Texas. Hmm,
It's
interesting.
just
Yeah, so that's
so.
Cy Young, but I think it was a ZRA dude. I mean, he was like 256. I'm sorry, 276 with Houston,
Mm-hmm.
211 innings pitched. Um, what was that? 470 strikeouts, which led,
270 strikeouts,
yeah,
damn.
he led the National League in strikeouts and ERA, but had an 8-16 record.
Boy, the
That,
Astros must have really freaking sucked that year.
yeah,
What was their
no
record?
no run support clearly. I mean, but that was also one of his higher WAR years as well.
Yep.
And I'd say actually, I mean, he didn't win, but this kind of brings up a discussion that's going to come later on, specifically when we get into the Felix Hernandez years, where
Mm.
you know how much do wins actually matter?
How much bearing should that have? Yeah.
Yeah, uh,
DeGrom, too.
right. But I mean, my man pitched from 1968 until 91.
Yep. Yep.
That's insane.
Yep. He was on that 69 Mets team.
Yep. Yeah.
My memory, my firsthand memory of Nolan Ryan, I recall my family when my dad was in the Air Force, we would sometimes be able to find these like free flights to be like if we're traveling as a family, we would go to these kind of the military uh, versions of airports called MAC terminals, and we at one point visited a few different countries in Europe, and we were set to kind of depart. But and I was like a 7-year-old at the time, so I don't know what all the ins and outs and the particulars were of it. So I don't know if we got bumped from a flight, and that's why we were waiting for a while. But we ended up waiting in the Germany MAC terminal for a while for a flight to bring us back to the States. And so we like didn't have any like reservations at like a hotel or whatever. So and we didn't know when we might get called to get onto a flight. So we just were staying at the Mac terminal. And I remember just as a little kid, like getting tired and then just kind of lying across some of the seats in the airport Mac terminal and just kind of going to sleep. And then I remember waking up it was in the middle of the night there, but since we're in Germany, it must have been earlier in the evening, obviously, in the States. And I remember waking up and seeing like these like players mobbing some pitcher on the mound, hoisting him up on their shoulders and being like, what's going on? And I asked my dad, I'm like, why are they all like celebrating? What happened? And he's like, Olin Ryan just threw his 7th no-hitter.
Yep.
And so I distinctly remember seeing that and my dad explaining it to me and just being like, whoa, and like kind of grasping and like I think I knew probably as my dad explained it to me that he was like pretty old and like towards the end of his career, obviously, and so for him to like still pull out a no-hitter at that age was like a huge deal. And so that's what sticks out to me as far as firsthand. It's probably one of my earliest firsthand recollections of watching baseball and being like, what's this all about?
I remember him being
86 innings.
Mm.
I'm sorry, say that again, bud.
5,386 innings for his career.
Filthy. It's filthy. So his 3,000th strikeout, Ricky Henderson.
Oh,
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a fitting way to get your 3,000th, considering how impossible it was to strike out Ricky Henderson.
Yep.
Yeah, he was known for his discipline. So, but I will tell you that one of the things that certainly helped endear me to the game was my mother being such a fan, and she was as big of a Red Sox fan as I think I've ever seen. And not just because she's my mother, but I will tell you what, she would tell you the birthday and the day that person was born and what year and what their average was. All that she taught me how to score a game. But the one player that did not wear a Red Sox uniform that she absolutely loved was Nolan Ryan. And so hearing her talk so positively and how dominant of a pitcher he was when he wasn't a Red Sox player really stood out to me.
Yep.
And so that really brought Nolan Ryan kind of to the forefront. Now, that being said, have you ever seen him throw the first pitch? Was it like 4 or 5 years ago? He's like 69 years old, 70 years old.
Is he still swinging?
He clocked him at 84.
Oh, jeez. What the hell?
Like, come on, dude. Like, just built different.
That's ridiculous.
It's insane. Insane.
That's Nolan Ryan. Built different. All right. Oral, we talked about. This is when he really started getting into that. I remember the Dodgers becoming a thing. I mean, I don't remember Rick Rochelle. Taylor, does that ring a bell to you?
Rick Russell?
Russell, okay, yeah.
Ruschel?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the list hasn't come out. Yeah. He was a soft thrower. Like he threw in the 80s.
Okay.
So a slop merchant, if you will.
Yes. Yep. I think he pitched for the Giants, actually.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
I
he did.
remember.
Yeah. Okay.
I
All right.
remember he was a big fatty too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So like the David Wells of his time,
Yeah.
fat
That's an
slop
excellent
merchant.
comparison, Quinn. He was a righty, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it's funny. So the other guy on this list, um, Mr. Bob Welch.
Mhm.
Um, I remember him having one of the more unfortunate free agent signings, um, where I mean he ended up getting a ring anyway, but I want to say it was either 86. No, it was 87. Um, because he's with the Dodgers here, so it had to have been 87.
Mm.
He went from L.A. to Oakland just in time for LA to beat Oakland in the World Series.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He
Poor
switched
guy.
sides at the wrong time. Yeah,
Ugh.
actually, yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, so I was right. So yeah, he went to Oakland in '88, and obviously he won um, a World Series with Oakland. The next year, and he went to the World Series again with Oakland. Um,
He
but
won 27 games in 1990.
Yep.
he was
Yikes.
filthy.
Yep.
Dude.
I
He
remember
was
that.
filthy.
Holy crap. Is that the most? What's the most games in the modern era that a pitcher has ever won in a season?
Most I've ever seen is 31.
Damn,
Denny McLean.
that's absurd.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's nuts.
Um, I just looked up Bob Welch because I remember when he died, it was a weird death. Um, and I guess he fell in the bathtub or something.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that. Yeah.
He had a very strange death. Yeah, accidental fall in the bathroom, broken neck.
No
What the
kidding.
hell? Eesh.
Um, well, the other thing I remember about him is when he pitched for the Dodgers, um, he had this big face off with Jackson in the World Series, and he struck him out at the end of the game.
Mm.
It was game two.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, he had
Oh,
an unfortunate time, but I'll tell you what, he ended up. Well, we'll see it later. He wins the Cy Young. Um,
Yeah, once we get to
good pitcher.
1990. Yeah.
Good pitcher.
yeah, yeah. I remember it was him, Honeycutt, um, Witt, Stewart, and Mike Moore.
Mm.
Yep.
That was my rotation um, for some of those more formidable, like late '80s, early '90s years.
Pretty damn good.
Yeah, yeah we weren't hurting.
Hmm.
All right, ready for the next year.
Yep.
Ready for that next year? Yeah.
All right, boys. '88.
Boy, the Cy Young voting was pretty threadbare for the National League. Wow, only 3 guys got votes.
Yep.
Damn.
Yeah,
Oral
yeah, and it's
Hershiser finally broke through. 88 was the season. That was the season where he had the scoreless innings, right? I guess something like that. You have a marquee
Yeah.
streak like that. That's gonna pretty much get it for you.
well, not to mention winning the World Series that year as well.
Ooh, that would do it too. Yeah.
And there's a story about that save. I don't remember what it was, but I want to say he came out to save a game in the regular season that was impactful to how they placed. And I'm not remembering that,
Mm.
but I remember him coming out of the bullpen. Um, a bit
8 shutouts.
filthy, filthy.
Yep.
I forgot that David Cohn played for Boston in 2001.
Yep. I met him.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Was he a dink or a nice guy?
No, he was nice. No, when I met him.
I was halfway hoping that you're gonna say, yeah, I met him. He was a fucking ass.
No, no, no. Yeah, I
He was
thought he
him.
would be an asshole. Um, I thought he would be an asshole, but he wasn't.
Nice.
He wasn't. Uh, I met Ron Darling too. He was a nice guy.
Those Hawaiians are so laid back.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. I don't remember much about Danny Jackson.
Left
Uh,
hand hard thrower.
No, was he with them when they won the World Series?
Yes, he was.
Was he? Okay.
He was also with Kansas City when they won in '85.
Yeah, I just saw that. I
mm.
just saw that. Yeah. Okay.
Remember well, he was a hard thrower.
Well, all right. Well, good for him.
Good pitcher.
The American League has certainly more candidates in there. Roger Clemens down at the bottom of the list.
With
Put a
Bruce
smile on your
Hurst.
face there, Matt.
Yeah, he had a big year that year, Hurst.
Mm.
He was a good pitcher, Bruce Hurst. He would have won the MVP of the World Series um, if they had beaten the Mets.
But then you got your Dave Stewart again. And then,
Yep.
before we get to the top two guys who are certainly worthy of some conversation here, but Mark Gubiza?
Yeah.
Gubiza?
Yep.
Say more about this goober.
He was, decent pitcher. He threw 269 innings that year. Won 132 games as a pro. The problem is he lost 136. I remember him though.
Now, was he? Oh, I gotta pull up this. Was he with? Yeah, he was with
Kansas
Kansas
City.
City. So he's got a ring too.
Yep.
He's got a ring too.
That was his outlier year, though. That was the only year he got any Cy Young votes, and he was an All-Star the next year, but then kind of faded into obscurity after that.
Yep.
But the
Now,
Eck and Frank Viola.
Yeah. So Eck, this is going to be an anomaly because something's going to come up later on with Eck when he gets a Cy Young.
Yeah.
And what else he wins is pretty damn impressive. But I remember the discussion on this. In this one, in granted, I didn't pay too much attention to Viola because I was a hometown boy at this point, being all of 10 years old at this point. With Eckersley, him getting as many first place votes as he did, which was only one, but being so close in the Cy Young was kind of like that discussion that people were talking about with DHs and getting to the Hall of Fame.
Mm.
Does a reliever really, earn a Cy Young award? But his dominance was just stupid.
With him, I would say yes. And I'm probably biased because I love Eck, but I remember when he pitched for the Red Sox. I think at the end of his time here in the '80s, anyway, he started to go downhill a lot, and we gave him a hard time a lot. And I think he was in the start of his alcoholism.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you guys heard the story about how his best friend took his wife?
Yes.
No.
Manning?
Yeah. Yep.
I don't think I know that story.
Yep.
Kind of filthy. So without giving too much information to his second wife, they had a child together. And a friend of mine ended up being the personal worker for that child for behavioral stuff. And actually, unfortunately, made the news a few years back.
Saw that, yeah.
Yeah. With some rough stuff. So X been through it. One of the reasons actually he was broadcasting with the Red Sox was to stay as close to that situation as well as possible.
Yep.
Um, but my man's been through it. Um, I'll tell you what, talk about having somebody have your back and having a guy like Tony La Russa say, "Hey, I don't think you're a starter. I want you to try at the bullpen."
Yep.
And I mean, the beginning of his career, specifically with Cleveland, early years with Boston. I mean, he was filthy then too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he was nasty.
Talk
Absolutely.
about all-star mustache and just flowing locks.
Yeah.
Look at that guy.
Majestic mullet.
Yes.
Yeah. Viola, I remember from the World Series games when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
But I don't remember anything specifically that really stood out to me. I remember more about those teams like, the Kirby Puckets, the Ken Herbecks, um, you know, that kind of thing. The Jack Moore. Oh no, um, not Jack Morris. Reardon. Some of those other guys we talked about. Anything notable that you want to bring up about Viola there, Mr. Taylor?
I remember him playing for the Mets after he won the Cy Young in Minnesota. He was pretty good for the Mets, but they were bad teams by that point.
I
Another
forget he
guy that
played for.
played for us for a while too.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep. He played for the Red Sox. Yeah. That's what the Red Sox would do. They would get all these guys at the end of their career.
They'd be like, "Oh, you know who's good? That guy who's 10 years
Yeah.
past his prime." All right.
So damn salty. So much. All right. Are we good with that year?
I think so.
All right. 89.
Britt Saberhagen again.
Did you say Hagen?
Hagen. Yeah.
Hagen.
It's just it's a fun last name to chew on. Put a little extra stank on it.
Yeah. Um, so Saberhagen, it's funny because I'm not wrong in this, Taylor, right? He pitched for a bit with Toronto, didn't he?
He might have. He might have.
No, I was wrong. He did not. He did not.
He
I
played
thought
for
for
Colorado for a brief stretch, but it was just the Mets after the Royals and then Boston.
I do remember him with the Mets.
Mm.
was he part of the expansion draft with Colorado?
Might have been actually.
Well, interesting. Oh
Yeah,
no, he went. Yeah,
1995. He was on two teams. Yeah. Oh yeah. It looks like he got traded
yeah, he
from
got
the
traded. Yeah,
Mets to
yeah,
the
he
Rockies.
wasn't part of the expansion.
Yeah.
Um, clearly I don't remember as much as I thought I did about Saberhagen. Uh, Taylor, I'm gonna go back to you. You're the
I don't remember him in that year, um, but I do remember him being dominant earlier in his career. And then when he came to the Red Sox, that was after he blew out his arm or blew out his elbow,
Hmm.
John. Um, you know, and I remember both Dave Stewart and Mike Moore and Burt Blyleven and Nolan Ryan and Jeff Ballard. I remember too.
Mhm. Now, real quick about Saberhagen. I know we don't put a lot of stock for you folks in WAR, but a 9.7 WAR for a pitcher, it's kind of unheard of.
That's pretty notable.
Yeah, well, given
Um,
it's more than twice almost anybody in there.
yeah, yeah. Um, complete games 12,
Yep.
led the league in innings pitched, ERA at 2.16, 23 wins. That's filthy
Yep.
for a team that I don't remember being that um, good that year. Am I wrong?
No, I don't remember that. I don't remember anything from that Royals team.
In 89, 89. Well, 89 they finished 92 and 70.
Okay.
Oh,
Respectable. I can't tell. They were second in the AL West. I don't know if they made it to the postseason though. Hmm.
Well, they were
biggest thing I
certainly
remember,
second to my boys.
yeah.
You're right.
Well, that's the year the A's won it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Which is reflected in the folks up here. I mean, Mike Moore, Dave Stewart, Eckersley again.
Hmm.
Um, just rough. I remember now, and I think it's interesting. This is the most relievers, specifically closers, that we've seen get Cy Young votes, uh, at least in the American League.
You wonder how much that's the Eckersley effect, given the
Well,
fact that
that's why I bring it up. That's why I
yeah,
bring it up.
yeah.
And in the National League, a closer actually won.
yes. Yep. I remember that too.
Yeah, for your San Diego Pirates. I'm
Mm.
sorry, Padres. Quinn.
Ooh,
For Quinn, they might as well be the Pirates.
that's
Yeah,
right.
I
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
San Diego suck bags is more like it.
Uh, if this was wrestling, you'd certainly be playing the heel, sir.
Much to the
Um,
chagrin of Tom DeLonge, who I love Tom DeLonge, co lead singer, guitarist of Blink 182. He's probably the biggest Padres fan that I'm aware of. You ever see his Instagram? He's in the stands all the time. But I'm sorry, Tom, your Padres are irrelevant.
well, I'm sure he's crying about it. Back
I'm
there.
sure he is. I'm sure he is.
Well, I'll tell you what. And a little foreshadowing for next podcast, but this is the first time we get to see number 3 on the vote in the National League show up.
Ooh, that's right.
Yeah.
Mr. Maddox.
The
Um,
professor.
yeah. And also, I want to highlight we didn't do this, but number 5 in the American League, another Nolan Ryan sighting.
Oh, there he is. He's popping up.
Yeah.
So the thing I remember
Towards
most
the
about
end of
89 was the Orioles because the year before, the Orioles lost their first 21 games in 88 and wound up losing like, I think, 107.
yikes.
And then they came back the next year and they finished second.
Nuts.
And a guy named Greg Olson was their closer, who I think is on this list.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was rookie of the year, too.
Greg Olson in his little picture here on
He was.
Baseball Reference looks like a little pipsqueak. Looks like he's like 12 years old.
Another guy with a big curveball.
Listen, you don't have to be that big as long as you have a big curveball.
Yeah.
All right. So, again, Hershiser, Mike Scott again, McGrain, who has now gone on to broadcast fame with the Baseball Network. Um, Tim Belcher is another guy I remember a lot about.
Yep.
Um, he seemed to pop around. He had a pretty decent career, if I remember correctly. Yeah, see, I
One
remember when Seattle, Kansas City, Anaheim.
146 and 140. Sounds like the kind of record someone with the name Belcher would have.
Again, Rolo playing heel, man, playing heel. I love it.
I've always wondered, it kind of reminds me of the people who are, you know, unlucky enough to hail from the town known as Belchertown here in Massachusetts.
Next to Amherst.
Yeah, I mean, beautiful part of the state. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, if I found out I'd be like, hey, fam, can we like move to the town over so I don't have to say, hey, I'm from Belchertown? Just doesn't really strike the most pleasant note.
Oh, so sad. So sad. Um, Bialicki, I remember the name. I don't remember a lot about him. And obviously Mitch Williams. Um, we all remember Mitch Williams. Um, now did he go to Philly right after this?
I think it took a couple of years, but yeah, the Cubs won the division that year.
They did. Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be
And got beat by the Giants. And Zimmer was the manager of that Cubs team, I remember now.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So he went to Philly in 91.
Mhm.
All right. Anything else on 89? I know this has been a kind of,
89. Hmm.
it's interesting. I didn't even consider this. When we did Rookie of the Year, obviously every time we opened a list was a new names
Right.
altogether.
We're
This
seeing
one
some
we're
of the
certainly,
same characters. Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of folks that we're covering, a little redundant, but I think that's fine. So maybe this is going to go a little bit quicker than Rookie of the
Yeah.
Year did for us.
Yeah.
Mark Davis was the ultimate example of a one-hit wonder.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, I do remember. Again, this was kind of like I felt like the reliever hype was
Yeah.
coming up. I want to say like when Lee Smith was having his big years in the mid '80s. Um, we didn't really see a lot of him showing up on these Cy Young votes. But I mean, obviously, like you said, maybe Eck had a little help in kind of bringing that to light a little bit.
Hmm. I think so.
All right, 1990.
1990. Who in the blue hell are these jobbers? That's my question for 1990.
All right, so I shitting on Drebeck
Drayback
and
sounds vaguely familiar,
yeah.
and Bob Welch. I mean, called the Oakland effect. I like. I don't know who the hell that is.
Well, um, Welch.
I find it amusing though that he was on Oakland that year, but when you pull up his page, he's got a Dodgers cap on.
So I want you to pay attention again to Mr. Welch's career because if you were paying attention earlier, this man was unfortunate. This is the gentleman that we just talked about that played for LA until 87,
Oh,
switched
right,
sides,
right,
and then lost the World Series against his old team
Yeah.
right.
with Oakland. But um, was a pretty dominant pitcher for many years.
Yep.
The guy was pretty filthy, pretty filthy.
Well, you guys know I'm not big on WAR, but look at Clemens' WAR compared to Welch.
Awful. That was
Yeah.
ridiculous. I mean, that's probably the highest we've seen
Yeah.
in any of the pitches. 10.4 for WAR. I
Yeah.
mean, 193 ERA.
How did Welch win that year? What?
It certainly helped them going into the World Series. Um, I want to say that this is something that wins, right? So this argument's going to come up again, right?
Hmm.
How much do wins weigh?
Yeah,
27 wins. Pretty significant
Yep.
for a team that went to the World Series.
that is a lot of wins.
Did Clemens have a better year? Yeah, 100%. Um, I think it's telling that um, you know, the win percentage here wasn't as lopsided as we've seen a lot of these.
Mm.
So I think that's reflected in that. But Welch won because of wins this year. That's the only thing I can see.
What seems to be the case.
I remember number 4 on that list. Anybody remember that?
Bobby Thigpen. I remember the name more than I remember him, but he was a reliever, right?
He set the record for saves in a season that year.
Oh yeah, look at that, 57.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yep.
Wow, look at Eckersley's ERA.
Yeah. Went 61.
That's ridiculous. Even with 73 innings pitched, that's ridiculous.
If they played entrance music back in those days, and I had a name like Bobby Thigpen, I would want to come out to the Peanuts, Charlie
Yeah.
Brown.
I knew exactly where you're going with that.
Oh yeah. And I would just like, just kind of bop up to the mound, kind of get all amped up to close the game out.
So I'm looking at Eckersley's inning that year, right? 73.1 innings, 4 walks.
Yeah,
4 walks.
Unreal. What the hell?
that's ridiculous. Well, the other thing so he had a .61 ERA and he had 2 losses. The only time he lost is probably when he gave him a damn run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous. Yeah, no,
4
his
walks.
control was filthy.
Man.
And his delivery, you wouldn't think his control would be as pinpoint as it is, given how like kind of just the style of his delivery seems like a guy that would be all over the place, and yet he was something special.
Yeah, well, it looked chaotic.
Yeah,
It was almost
like limbs all
controlled
over the place.
chaos.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, Eck was one of those guys. I remember as a kid, um, watching him come into the game and just being like, "All right, game's over.
got
We're
this.
good. We're set." And for the most part, as you can see here, it was accurate. The next
Can we
guy on the
all?
list,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Steve. I
Yeah.
remember him. Um, you know, for those World Series teams with, um, you know,
Toronto.
yeah, with Toronto, Henderson winning that World Series with them, and that was something. So my brother was always a Toronto Blue Jays fan. So that was a little contention when my boy Ricky went over there. That was something I remember. So Steve, I remember him. Steve, I remember him pretty well.
He fell off a cliff after that year.
Yeah, but he pitched for a while longer, didn't he?
Yeah.
And
Dominant pitcher.
was it all with Toronto?
1 year with
1 year
Chicago.
with the White Sox. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And that was it though.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, see, I only remember with Toronto.
Must have blew out his arm.
Mm.
Probably.
Yeah, because he didn't play for 4 years there, and then it looks like he tried to come back with Toronto 4 years after 4 years of not playing. So it must have been some sort of maybe injury or whatever.
This next dude,
Pitchers in the American League.
what's that?
He was one of the best pitchers in the American League in the 80s.
Yeah, Steve was good. So Chuck Finley, I remember as a kid, I always got him confused because one of the old owners of my favorite team was Charlie Finley. And as a kid, I knew that Chuck was kind of a nickname for Charlie. And I always thought that it was weird that the owner was pitching against my team. So as a child, that's what I was thinking.
That's funny.
Two very different people.
Yes, I know that now. That being said, I know much less about this Chuck Finley than I do about Charlie Finley. So yeah, it
Anybody
looks
care to
like
guess who Chuck Finley was married to? Since you guys are big music fans, maybe
oh
music fans of the 80s.
oh
One Tawny Katane. Remember Tawny?
Oh, yes.
that's not who I would have guessed. Wait, didn't they get in trouble or something like that? Or
Yeah.
he
Yeah, I think
okay.
he might have hit her or something, or had
Okay.
domestic violence.
Um,
Mm.
Like,
all right. Yeah, I guess that's the only thing I really remember from that. Now
actually, she was a big, she had big time drug addiction.
Yeah.
was she was she the White Snake girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like white steak videos, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Here I go again on my own, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, that's funny. No kidding. Look at you, fun fact boy.
Yep.
All right. National League.
Let's see.
Before you tell me who the hell this Doug Drabeck is, um,
You don't remember Dreback?
I just want to pay homage to number two on the list, older brother of the hallowed Pedro Martinez, uh,
Hmm.
Ramon. Uh, Ramon, who made a little bit of a mark there, but
Yep.
you know, this is probably the most glory he would ever feel before his little brother came in to outshine him as he made his way in the big leagues.
You know, why do you gotta be mean about it? My man pitched in the major leagues, was part of a family that played in the major leagues. And you gotta give him shade for this being his
Good.
one.
Hey, I was just saying, let's give him his flowers because this is as good as it's ever going to get for
This is
him.
it. This is
Or
it. He was terrible after that. Not worth it. Wow. So cold. So cold. Well, so I didn't realize he actually pitched for Boston for a couple of years with Pedro.
yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
Pedro had something to do with that. It's
Yep.
probably like, if you want me to keep pitching and being as dominant as I am, bring my brother over
Yep.
to hang out with me for a little bit.
I was at a game that he pitched, playoff game. Yeah, he was a good pitcher.
Yeah,
Ramon.
I mean, looking at his stats, he wasn't bad.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
he just
well,
wasn't. He just wasn't the greatest of all time. I mean, what are you gonna do?
I'll tell you what, he had a World Series ring before Pedro did
True.
He did.
in '88. It's not showing up on his baseball reference, but I'm sure he got one.
He probably didn't. That's interesting that they don't give him one. Probably just because he didn't qualify for having like service time that year or something like that, or what?
He showed up in 9 games, pitched 35 innings. I'm sure they gave him a ring,
Yeah.
so he did that before his younger brother. Oh, so much salt.
I got to say this episode of our podcast is making me sound old because I remember Drebeck clear as day.
The
So
name does sound vaguely familiar, but he's also for the was on the Pittsburgh Pirates, so
He
they're
was
kind of
part
like
of
they're kind of like the San Diego Padres of the East.
that. So that was the first year they won three straight uh, division titles.
Mm.
They lost to the Reds in the NLCS, who went on to beat the A's, and then um, I don't know if you guys remember the famous game in '92 where Frank Cabrera got that. He had like 400 career at bats, and he got the winning hit in the pennant. Sid Bream coming around.
I do remember that. Yep. And that was the last
Drebeck
game
pitched
with
like 8 innings.
yeah, that was the last game Barry Bonds played for
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
played for Pittsburgh. Yep.
And I remember that. Ah, his son played too. Center fielder for Pittsburgh.
Van Slyke.
Yes, Van Slyke actually told Barry Bonds to move in
Yep.
on that play,
Yep.
and famously, Van Slyke claims that Barry Bonds actually flipped him off um, and stayed in place.
Yep.
And had he moved in, he may have even been able to make a play on the ball and catch it, or more likely, actually throw a Bream, who was not a fast runner, at the plate.
Oh, Barry.
Oh, Barry. Oh, Barry, Barry, Barry. Yeah, interesting. Um, Frank Viola, we already talked about. Gooden, we already talked about. This is probably the last year that I think we might see Gooden on this list
Mhm.
for at least for a while. I don't know if he ever got any Cy Young votes for the Yankees, but I think we're getting close to the end of his that
Yeah.
season. Um, Randy Myers is another name that sounds really familiar. I see that he was a closer. And I know he was with Cincinnati, and I think that's where I remember him, but I can't tell you anything other than I think um,
Mm.
he was a pain in the ass in the World Series.
Mm.
Neither one of you remember the Nasty Boys?
Of course I do.
Randy Myers, Norm Charlton, Rob Dibble.
Oh, he was part of the Nasty Boys.
The Nasty Boys, my frame of reference for the Nasty Boys is the WWF tag team from the late 80s, early
Yeah,
90s.
it wasn't Nas and
Oh
whatever the
yeah, Hobbs or whatever.
was.
No, wait. He was part of the Nasty Boys with
Yeah,
Philly.
with his Cincinnati.
I thought the Nasty Boys were with Philly with Mitch Williams.
Nope. Rob Dibble, Randy Myers, Norm Charlton.
All right, who? What did they call the early '90s
Phillies.
bullpen in Philly with Dibble, with um
Firestarter.
no, dude.
I remember, I'll tell you what I remember about that series was, well, I remember a lot of things about that series, but I remember the Phillies blowing a 14-7 lead. Uh, and I think it was game 4 against Toronto. But yeah, the Nasty Boys were not Drebeck, Randy Myers, Dibble, and Norm Charlton. Charlton would pitch the 7th, Dibble would pitch the 8th, and Myers would pitch the 9th.
Huh.
Let's see. And he pitched for, he was a closer for the Mets for a little while too. Let's see.
Yeah, no, you're right. What in the world was it? The Nasty Boy? Why wasn't I think it was Phillies?
Well, they were a crazy bunch.
They were. This was Dibble, Mitch Williams. They not have another nickname.
Knobs and Sags.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, no, I must be confusing the two.
Randy
Wow.
Myers. Yep.
Well, I I think personally, let's hear what you guys think. This would be an opportune time to draw the line and restart this or continue this topic in our next podcast because we're about to enter just an epic streak of Atlanta Braves pitchers uh, um, throughout basically the entirety of the 90s. And one of them in particular, I think, is going to take up a lot of our time next time, and I'm really interested in taking a look at a documentary that Mr. Greco
We'll look at it too.
directed us to about one of the greats of all time, Greg Maddux.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm good with that. Let me see something real quick. So obviously we know that in 91 what you're talking about was we actually have a repeat, but we have a new name.
That's right.
Evan. So yeah, I'm certainly going with that because I think that
because Gladman's
before
worth
we
a little
even
bit
get
of a conversation too.
yeah, no, and not only that, I think that looking ahead, I think there's certainly some at least one or two names on here that's worth talking about, even below under there. So yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Um, yeah, so I'm really looking forward to see what you folks think of um the documentary, and I think it's apropos that we get to watch that because the person the documentary is about, um, you know, wins four in a row.
Pretty much owns the first half of the 90s.
Yeah.
What is it on, Greco? What streaming service?
So the link I sent you was on YouTube. So I'll resend it to you.
Okay.
And you can check it out. It's
Cool.
a MLB Network production.
Oh,
So I'll check it out. I'll send it to you. Again, it's certainly worth a watch. There's a few that I think are. So
is it
I'm
just on
curious.
Maddux?
Just about Maddux.
Okay.
Just about Maddux. The title of it is
One of a kind, I think.
One of a Kind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is 100% accurate. I mean, one of the little fun facts that we sent out to each other. This was actually sent out by Mr. Rolo. December 23rd. So a little early Christmas present from
Oh
Rolo.
yeah.
Oh.
Greg Maddux once threw a 77 pitch complete game. He did it in 2 hours and 7 minutes. Maybe because he was in a rush to get home, drink a squirt, and watch a Discovery Channel special on dinosaurs. Perhaps he wanted to enjoy some long division and some at the supper table, or plant some hydrangeas or lavender out back. But I'll tell you this: don't let the glasses fool you, because at the end of the day, he'll. Okay, so this once you watch the documentary actually becomes a little bit funnier.
Yeah.
And this is good. He'll take a piss in a jacuzzi, buzz one by your ear, and send you back to the bench quicker than a jackrabbit on a date. He may drive a Toyota Camry, but it has a bumper sticker that says, "If you don't like my driving, call 1-800-EAT-SHIT."
Greg Maddux says that?
I don't know if those are all facts. The only one that I will tell you that is certainly a fact is that man pitched a 77 pitch complete game in 2 hours and 7 minutes.
That's insane. Wow.
Yes.
Listen, I found that on the internet, which means it's to be believed 100%. Okay.
That's true.
I believe he did that. He could do that. He could do that.
Yeah. But the funny thing is shortly after that, and this is something that I thought was interesting, and I don't know why it even popped up, but I ran across one about Tony Gwynn.
Oh.
In the same day. He faced Maddux, Pedro, Glavine, and Smoltz 323 times.
Wow.
Out of those 323 times, he struck out 3.
Yeesh.
That's filthy.
Talk about putting the bat on the ball. Damn.
That's filthy. So So for every one Maddox who can dominate, there seems to be a Tony Gwynn. But that's why we love the game,
Absolutely.
gents.
Yep.
Till next time.
Always a pleasure.
Good night, kids.
Good night.